Hello, my name is Philip and welcome to today's video where we will talk about rules. Now here is a question for you. Do you have to carry an ID with you in the UK? An ID is an identity document like an ID card or a passport or a driving license. Think about the answer for a minute and once you've decided, click up here and vote. I am going to park the car in the meantime. So think, click and vote. The correct answer is no. In the UK, you don't have to carry an ID with you. And don't have to is a modal of necessity that we must learn about today. Have to, don't have to, must and mustn't are what we call modals of necessity. Because they are modal verbs, they are followed by a bare infinitive. For example, you don't have to carry an ID, you must go to school. If you don't remember what a bare infinitive is, check out my video on infinitives where I explain it. The form of must and mustn't is the same for all persons, so I must go, she must go. We don't add the third person s. Have to and don't have to, however, do take a third person s. For example, he has to go, he doesn't have to go. Mustn't is a contraction of must not. So you mustn't do it and you must not do it is the same. To make a question with have to, we use the auxiliary do and follow the quasi or asi trick. So, do you have to go there? To make a question with must, we use the modal verb must as our auxiliary and follow the quasi-asi trick. So, must I go there? When we talk about the form, you might think that don't have to is the negative form of have to. Do not think that. Do not think that. They all have a different use I am about to explain. Think of them independently. We use both have to and must for obligation and rules, when you don't really have a choice whether you do it or not. Of course, you always have a choice in life, but if you don't do what you have to or must do, there will be a bad consequence, like a punishment, for example. Have to and must mean the same, but there is one small difference. Have to is usually used for general rules, like laws or rules in a school or at work. Must is more of a personal rule, a personal obligation, one that might be between you and your parents, or something that you set for yourself. For example, in Australia, you have to drive on the left. You don't really have a choice, because if you drive on the right, you will crash and probably cause an accident. It's not a good idea. But you must learn a foreign language, ideally English. It's not an obligation, you do have a choice, but in this 21st century, you probably wouldn't get very far if you didn't speak English, so you must do it. Or when you go to a church, you have to take your hat off. It's just a polite thing to do in most societies. It's the right thing to do. Or I could say, I must do my English homework tonight. So I don't have to do it tomorrow, I can go on a trip. We use must because it's more of a personal obligation, something that I set for myself. However, if you do use have to, it means the same and it's not the end of the world. Now, don't have to is not the negative form of have to. Don't have to means something is not necessary. So you do have a choice whether you do it or not, and if you do it or don't do it, there is no bad consequence, no punishment. For example, you don't have to carry an ID in the UK. It's okay if you do, and it's okay if you don't. Nothing happens. Mustn't, on the other hand, means you cannot do it. It is prohibited, and you do not have a choice. If you do it, there will be a bad consequence. For example, in the UK, you mustn't drive faster than 70 miles per hour on a motorway. That's just the rules. If you do it, then you will have a speeding fine, a punishment. Or I could say, I don't have to do my homework tonight. I can do it tomorrow, because I have a choice. I can do it today or tomorrow. But I mustn't forget to do it before the next lesson. If I forget it, then the teacher will be very angry and they'll probably give me a bad mark. Or, looking at this road sign, it is for pedestrians and cyclists. You don't have to walk, you don't have to cycle, but you mustn't drive a car there. It is against the rules. Also, in a lot of our examples today, we use the word you, like you don't have to carry an ID, you mustn't drive here, or you have to take your hat off. But who is you? Is it you? You, the person? The one specific person? Well, no. We call it the impersonal you because it means everyone in general, every single person in a society. Talking about the word mustn't, it is important to point out that we don't pronounce the first T in this negative contraction. So we say mustn't, mustn't. Let's practice. I'm going to show you 5 sentences with the word mustn't. First, listen to me pronounce the sentence. Afterwards, I'll give you 5 seconds to repeat. And after that, we are going to repeat the sentence together one more time. We'll do this for each of the 5 sentences. Now you focus on pronouncing mustn't without the first T. Mustn't, mustn't, mustn't. You mustn't go in here. You mustn't go in here. You mustn't smoke inside. You mustn't smoke inside. You mustn't ride a horse here. You mustn't ride a horse here. You mustn't swim in the lake. You mustn't swim in the lake. You mustn't cross the road. You mustn't cross the road. And here is your bonus fact. At the beginning of the video, I said you don't have to carry an ID with you in the UK. In fact, not everyone in the UK has an ID. Firstly, we don't have ID cards in the UK like you do in most European countries. We simply don't have them. Secondly, you don't need to have a passport if you don't travel outside the country. As unthinkable as that might be, some people have never left the country. And thirdly, you don't have to have a driving license. It's not compulsory to drive. Above all, in the UK, the police or other authorities simply do not have the right to ask you for an ID. It's just not the way we do things in the UK. They might ask you to identify yourself, in which case they would ask you a series of questions, and then they would check the computers and database to make sure that it is you who you are saying you are. Now, of course, it might be a good idea to have a photo ID. For example, a lot of young people get something called a provisional driving license. A normal driving license is pink. A provisional one is green. You need to have a provisional driving license before you start taking your driving lessons. Of course, it's very helpful when you want to buy alcohol or cigarettes, because in that case you do have to prove that you are over 18. Now it's time to check what you have learned. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Pause the video if you need some time to think about the answers, and then check the answers which are in the description of the video down below. Question 1. What's the difference between have to and must? Question 2. What kind of verb do we use after modals of necessity? Is it a full infinitive, a bare infinitive, a gerund? Question 3. When I say you must do it, do you have a choice? Question 4. When I say you don't have to do it, can you do it? And question number 5. Who is you in the sentence you have to stop here? Also, don't forget to follow the link in the description of the video down below to go and practice the modals of necessity. There are some exercises I have designed especially for you to help you revise what you have learned. I hope my explanation of the modals of necessity was helpful for you. If it was, you must give me a like. Now, you don't have to subscribe, but if you do by clicking on my face down there, you will know when I release a new video. And if you want to learn some more A to B1 grammar, then click on my playlist over here and check out some of my other videos. That is all from me for now, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.